Hey there everybody, it's Mark Crilley. I'm back with another How to Draw video. Today we're going to be learning how to draw a horse, or rather just the head of a horse. And what I've got here are two boxes. Now I want to sort of help some people out. They want to know exactly what the measurements are on these things. They're about 5 centimeters on all sides. That is just a little bit under 2 inches. So if you want to follow along, go ahead and get these lines in place. And what I'm going to do now is begin putting down some of the basic guidelines for drawing the horse's head. All right, well, now this is just one line, but actually the placement of it is pretty crucial, so I thought I'd stop here and do a bit of explanation. This line beginning down here towards the second of the 3 horizontal lines, gently curving up, and just right around here where these 2 lines intersect is where it needs to come to rest on this first horizontal line. Now, what I wanted to point out is it begins to rather sharply curve down. This is going to be the top of the head. And this point right here, if you can look at the sort of relationship where you are in this square, just a little bit off center, that's where this line is going to stop. And in the next little bit here, I'm going to show you how there's a little protrusion here where the eye socket is going to be. Let's go ahead and get that line into place. Now this line here is very tricky indeed. Once you get past this protrusion, like I said, that is sort of like the brow that shields the eye on the one side here, you're going to want to pay attention to the angle of this line as it heads down towards the snout. And it sort of bends in, or out, I suppose, as you want to put it, coming over here to touch this far line over here on the lower square. Then it's going to cut back down, and just before it reaches that next line, you get a bit of an angle that finishes off the snoutal region here, for lack of a better word. I'm sure there is a better word, but I'll be darned if I know what it is. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and draw just a few more lines here to complete the basic shape of the horse's head. Okay, so this line comes back up here, sort of finishes off this area of the snout. Then there's quite a straight line that comes across, and you want to pay attention to the angle of that, especially in relation to this line here. Just see how the two of them are at slightly different angles as they fill out this lower square. And then right when this line passes this line of the square, that it kind of curves out, makes a rounded area. And then the final thing you'd want to pay attention to is where the neck sort of attaches to that line right there. Well, let's go ahead and get the ears in place. All right, so this first ear is lined up with this vertical line over here, and it sort of falls neatly on top of that first line at the top of the head, its location. Just sort of pay attention to the basic shape there and its size in comparison to the rest of the head. And this ear over here is sort of poking off at a different angle, and so the shape that it makes, the contour line that it makes is quite different than this one over here. Well, it's time to place the eye. You can only see one of them from this point of view. So let's go ahead and get that in there. Okay, so the eye is just a little off to the right here, not quite touching that line. Also notice its distance from the center horizontal line. The size is important. Actually, the horse's eye is rather small in comparison to the rest of the head. Of course, quite large compared to human eyes. But the angle of it, it sort of is like an almond shape, and it is sort of pointing down. That was one interesting thing that I noticed. And we're going to get into the details of the eyes later on. And I was surprised to what degree they actually do resemble human eyes in many respects. But one last thing we need to do is get the sort of nostrils in place, and then maybe we can stop with all this time-lapse and start getting into the real-time drawing. All right, well, the nostril of the horse is actually quite large, and what you've got here is the sort of hole that goes inside the horse's head. That sounds kind of graphic. He's got a hole. It's a hole going inside his head. But what I noticed was that there's almost like seashell-like quality to this nostril, in that a line will come up here above. Hopefully this is coming out clearly in the video, and then it sort of begins to spiral inward to create the area of where the actual nostril will be. I'm going to get into more shading later on, but I just thought I'd sort of give you a quick bit of shading there to help you see what it is I'm drawing there. Now for drawing the mouth, I'm going to begin right over here that's quite near to this line, and then begin to have it come out just a little bit so that you get a certain angle going on here with the with the lip. Now once I've got this in place, I can begin to start working on some of these other lines that are really quite important for getting the shape of the horse's snout in there. So this line comes up here above and begins to delineate a region here that I didn't notice until I started studying photographs of horses. You've got this very solid structure here, this rounded area down here. I guess would be, you'd call it the cheek or something. You know, comparing it to human facial anatomy. But there's this area down here that tends to fall into shadow. Very often has, you know, later on you're going to see me add details here, and there'll be sort of like a texture almost of different subsections down here. And I'm not going to get too much further into this, but getting this line in place here and sort of anticipating that there's going to be a region here that's separate from the rest of the head, that's pretty important, I think, for getting the basic structure of the horse's head in place. Well, I'm going to sort of try to zoom in at least a little bit so that we can get into drawing the details of the eye. Okay, so as I said, I was surprised as I began studying photographs of horses' eyes that there are a number of similarities between the eye of a horse and the human eye. For example, very often you see a pronounced eyelid area with a sort of fold of the upper eyelid. And then you'll see eyelashes. And what I'm going to do is just sort of put in a few lines here that tell me where the eyelashes are going to be. The rest of the eye is going to be quite dark, maybe partially in shadow, but I'm going to be, later on, you know, when I pull out my trusty black Prismacolor, I'm going to be darkening in this quite a bit. Now over here, we've got a tear duct area, another thing that reminds me a lot of the human eye. And depending on the horse, you're going to see, to one degree or another, some form of a, I don't know if it's like a bag under the eye or some delineation of form underneath. Not every horse is going to have this, but I at least saw some photos. But one thing that seemed pretty consistent from one photo to the next was that behind the area of the eye, there seemed to be an indentation of some kind that tended to not get so much light, you know, it would produce an area of shadow over here. And, you know, I should just point out that a video like this is, of course, only showing you how to draw a horse's head from one particular angle. And I do not mean to say that I'm teaching you everything you need to know about drawing horses. No, far from it. This is, you're just sort of dipping your toe into the water if you follow along with this. You got to study anatomy, right? If you want to really learn how to draw horses for real, you're going to have to get into the skeletal structure, which is probably what, you know, is responsible for this indentation that I'm talking about back here, shielding the eye, perhaps. I myself have not taken a deep dive into studying horses' anatomy. I probably should have prior to doing this video. But I got a lot of things on my plate these days, people. Anyway, just a little bit of a you know, warning there to those of you who want to get into drawing horses. You're going to have to put a lot more time into it than just one video like this. Anyway, you can see me erasing away this area where the ears are, and I think just to make sure you can see everything I'm doing, I better refocus the camera. Now, as I looked at photographs of different horses' ears, I found that it was a little hard to see the details of it because there is sort of hair on the interior of the ears, at least for a lot of breeds of horses. And so in this place where you would expect, you know, there to be a hole of sorts that allows sound to enter the ear, there's maybe going to be hair on either side that's partially obscuring the anatomy of the ear. But coming up here towards the top, I want to get just a little darkness in that sort of defines the shape of the tip of the ear. There's kind of an interesting teardrop type of shape to a horse's ear, which I had never noticed really until I started studying the photographs. And then, as I said, this one is pointing off at a significantly different angle, and I'm going to put in a secondary line here that begins to sort of show the outer surface of the ear as opposed to the inner surface. And by shading in a little bit here, I think I'll make that considerably clearer. Different horse breeds seem to have different degrees of fur along the edge of the ear. I saw some horses where this area would become quite furry, and that would apply to this edge as well. But it seems like the very tips are not going to be very furry, at least for most breeds of horses. Now, while we're up here in the drawing, toward the top of the drawing, I'm going to go ahead and start to indicate the mane, the horse's mane, and this area very often is a sort of a single clump of hair. It depends on, basically whether the wind is blowing it around or not. I think almost for artistic purposes, I feel like breaking this up just a little bit. And notice the length of the mane. Again, I suppose different breeds are going to have different lengths of hair, but it's going to come down towards this protrusion over here, and then that's basically where it needs to stop. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of extra hair that breaks up the contour of the head itself. Maybe have a single strand come off, maybe being blown in the wind a bit. And up here, also going to break up that contour line a little bit to suggest the different sort of clumps of hair, strands of hair. I'm going to make this hair very dark, almost like jet black towards the end, as a way of making contrast with the rest of the horse's head, which I'm imagining as brown. Of course, it'll all be kind of gray, because I'm doing a black and white drawing here. But as for drawing the rest of the mane, happily, it's a bit simpler than I even imagined as I looked at photos, a lot of them anyway. Very long, very flat, sort of reminiscent of certain types of human hair, people who have that long, sort of stringy, flat hair that doesn't curl at all in any way. At least some horses have a mane like that. And I'm not going to get too much into drawing the mane. I really wanted this video to focus mostly on the structure of the head, but at least get some of it in there. And I guess while I'm up here, I'll show that I'm going to do, as I broke up the contour there, I'm going to do the same thing here, sort of break up this contour. I think it helps to make it look more like actual hair, that it's not so smooth that each one of these is sort of got its own subsection, a subdivision of a subsection that is breaking up the contour, making it just feel more like you're really looking at hair. Again, we're going to get much more into the details of the hair later on, probably mostly in time-lapse, I'm afraid, as is so often the case with these videos. But I do feel that if you get the structural lines in place, you've got a big head start towards making a good drawing of a horse. In any case, I am going to refocus the camera so that we can get into some of the more subtle markings or surface detail that we see on the head of the horse. Okay, so you can see I took a moment to erase the basic guidelines because you really don't want to try to erase those later on after you start doing more of the detail. Now, this is, to me, where you separate a casual drawing of a horse from a more detailed one, and that is where you begin to start doing some of these more subtle indications of structural lines and parts that you would see maybe just underneath the skin of the snout of the horse. And what I'm going to do here, you can sort of see me creating a almost linear area of shade that points down towards the snout. And this is maybe getting a little hyper detailed, but some of you may enjoy doing this. I noticed that quite a lot of horses would have some sort of vein crossing right around this point in the snout, that the vein that is so near to the surface, just below the skin, that it may cast a shadow and become quite visible. And depending on the horse, I don't know if it comes down to the age or whatever, or just the breed, but sometimes you'll even see more than one visible vein in this area. And then over here, between this area that I just put in and coming down to this first area that I had blocked in quite a while back, there's going to be a sort of a secondary area of shade. The shadows being cast by irregularities, maybe is the best way to put it, in the surface of the horse's snout. And I think these little bits, these little areas of shade, are surprisingly important in terms of conveying the authenticity, the full horsiness of the horse is really brought out by these areas of shade. I think that if you take a moment to focus on these areas, you will be rewarded with a much more, it will just really ring true as an actual horse illustration. Now down here I found, again, it depends on the lighting situation, but in an awful lot of horses' photographs, I saw an area of quite deep shade down here, and later on with the Prismacolor I'm going to go quite dark in this area, maybe almost to black. But this little area that I first sort of roped off, from the rest of the snout, this whole area is going to get sort of shaded in. And I began to talk earlier about how, speaking of irregularities, this area down here can have quite a lot of irregularities, almost sort of looking like wrinkles or something. So that comparatively smooth, especially over here, very smooth, this area. Some irregularities coming across the snout, but down here you may see some quite pronounced, almost looks like wrinkles on someone's neck or something, an old man's neck. And then the area of the snout itself, I guess, I'm tempted to refocus, but my camera only gets so focused on these things, so I think I might as well just leave it where it is. The snout, I noticed, it was sort of a revelation to me how fully sculpted it was. I mean, there's, like I said, it has this sort of curly Q spiraling inward structure. That I also had not noticed, but all the way around the edge of it, shadows being cast by, it's sort of flared, like a permanently flared nostril. That was something new to me that I didn't really notice by casually observing horses, as most of us do. You just sort of pass by a horse and think, oh, how pretty, or whatever, and you're not really focused on the details. Now down here you might see another secondary area of shade. Down here around the mouth, maybe a number of different more wrinkly areas, but I'm going to actually come in here and try to make this even more clearly a slightly triangular area around the lip. I noticed some horses had this, and I thought it was sort of interesting. And when I say triangle, I mean like where the mouth of the upper lip is at a different angle than this lower lip line, and so you end up with this area here, maybe just a little bit of a triangular-like shape to it. And basically, I think we've got the major details in here. Now, I know that out there are going to be people who are real experts in drawing horses, and I apologize to you if I've got anything wrong. I guess now that I'm over here, I'm remembering that you may be able to see a hint of like eyelash or something of the other eye. But largely that other eye is obscured when you see a horse from this particular point of view, which I feel is sort of the classic point of view, this three-quarter point of view. Shows off the beauty of the horse in the best way possible. Well, I think it is time for me to pull out the old black Prismacolor. Where is it? I gotta go find it, and then I'm going to come back, refocus the camera so you can see the whole thing, and just get in some of the basic darkest black outlines, and then I'm going to come back and hopefully be able to spend a fair amount of time talking about the shading. All right, well, I've got most of the darker lines where I feel I need them to be. Towards the end, I'm going to be adding more shading of like the mane. Like I said, I want to make that very dark. But for now, what I want to talk about is adding shading to the surface of the horse's head. And I'm going to switch back to my Dixon Ticonderoga. And, you know, inevitably there is going to be time lapse here. Can't avoid that. But I want to do a fair amount of it real time. So I'm going in, holding my pencil quite low to the paper. If you've watched my videos before, some of you have seen me or you know, heard me say this before, that when you lower the pencil down, you hold it at a great distance from the tip, you get this very low angle. It's very easy to move it back and forth quickly and just sort of get a region of shade in place. Now, my idea for this horse's pattern, I guess, in terms of, or coloration, is that he's going to be brown towards the top of his head, and then gradually fading to white as we go further down the snout, and then it's going to go dark again right at the snout. I saw, anyway, a number of horses that had that sort of a pattern. So I'm just very quickly getting this into place. Going to be refining it a lot more later on to make it smoother and smoother, but I thought I'd just sort of get this in place and then maybe begin to talk about how we can add more and more subtlety to the shading in a more precise way. So at this point, I'm going to move in a little closer to the tip of the pencil with my hand, and that way I'm going to be able to get more control. And this is where I'm going to start going for more subtle effects of shading. Let's in fact go ahead and zoom in here so that I can show this as best I can. So yeah, I think even more so than with a lot of animals, a drawing of a horse is all about the shading. There's only so many lines, really, in terms of the structure of the head that you need to get into place. You know, we got the eye, we got the outline of the snout. The rest of it is all done by way of shading. And so when you see me making small sort of circular motions of the pencil, different people have different approaches to shading. Last thing I want to do is suggest that this is the way to shade. This is just kind of my way of shading. In fact, I'll use different forms of shading from one drawing to the next. So, you know, if you find that little circular motions like this just don't work for you, then, you know, experiment until you find the approach that works. But notice how I'm adding increasing areas of darkness over here to the kind of to the right of the eye, maybe up around the temple. As I said, pretty consistently in photographs, I saw just behind the eye a pretty pronounced area of shade caused by an indentation, I'm guessing, in the actual skull, skeletal structure of the horse's head. But, you know, if you didn't get this shading stuff in there, I think you really would find that it somehow doesn't quite look like a horse. I think these little areas of shading are absolutely crucial. I'm getting another area right here that's just below the eye, a little bit to the right, and then we get back into this area that I tried to describe, tried and failed to describe earlier, a sort of a diagonal, linear area of shade. Again, you know, the shade is there for a reason. It's, you know, it's a reflection of the structure just underneath the skin. And as I said, getting in, if you love going for detail, you're going to love this little part here where you put a vein, or would it be an artery? Somebody help me out here. Going across the snout of the horse. But as I said, I'm going to be also not just doing shading that is related to the structure of the horse, but also to the sort of pattern of the horse's skin, coloration, I suppose I should say. It's going to be concentrating all the darkness. In my mind, I see this as brown. It's going, you know, even though it's a black and white drawing, the sort of brown-skinned area of the horse's head will all be up here towards the top, and then getting lighter and lighter as we head down towards the snoutal region. The snoutal region, dude, that is not a word. Just because you keep saying it over and over again does not make it real. But I just love saying the word snoutal region. I can't explain why. Anyway, I'm trying my best to come up with new things to say about shading. I know people hate it when I fast forward or time lapse through the entire shading area, but I do feel like you just reach a point where I feel like I've said it all, you know. And, a lot of people will request, you know, don't do any time lapse on the shading, but what you're talking about is a 2-hour video. at that point. And I'm not exaggerating, you know. At this point, I am going to probably put in at least another hour or more into the shading, gradually building it up. And certainly no one wants to hear me talk about that, but I don't think you even want to watch me do it, frankly, in real time. It is almost like watching paint dry. If I were to try to do an entire video. I did a no time-lapse challenge last summer. Maybe time to do another one of those. But I ended up breaking it into 4 videos. People will remember that. So you had to watch over the period of a month, basically, the same drawing every Friday. Such was the price you paid to see real-time shading. But you can see me trying to create a sort of gradient, gradual change from dark towards the bottom, gradually moving up to light at the top in this area. I guess I'll call it the cheek. The cheeky. You're very cheeky, Ors. All of my English viewers are like, McCrilly, please, don't do the English accent. It's terrible. It really hurts our ears when you do the English accent. And maybe that's about as far as I can go. I'll just sort of tell you. In fact, I'm going to switch briefly back to my trusty black Prismacolor. Down here, pretty consistently, at least with any horse being lit from above, you're going to get a pretty dark drop shadow of the horse's head against the neck. And so now I think it is finally time for me to kick it into time-lapse and keep gradually building up this shading. And also you're going to see me go in, probably one of the last things I do is go in and darken in the mane of hair so that it looks like a brown horse with black hair. So let's go ahead and kick it into time-lapse and finish up this drawing. Alright, well, there's my video on how to draw a horse. I hope you found it useful. Let me know what you thought. And to my regular viewers, those of you who are about to leave a comment about, Mark, you forgot the blushies, just don't do it, man. Don't do it. I'm just kidding. Go ahead if you want to leave that comment. But for now, let me thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books. We got Brody's Ghost and Miki Falls, my 2 graphic novel series, as well as Mastering Manga 1 and Mastering Manga 2, my How to Draw books. I really do greatly appreciate the support of those of you who help me out by picking up any of those books. But let's go ahead and lay down this pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.